Why is Helldivers 2 so special? On the face of it, the game doesn't do anything particularly novel. It's another cooperative squad-based PvE shooter. It is the latest in a long line of such games. So why does it have a different feeling to it? I think it's because of why and how it makes us care about the narrative of the game. PvE cooperative shooters are often structured around these level-based scenarios. Some of the most iconic ones are Left 4 Dead, Vermintide, Deep Rock Galactic, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few more. Each puts you and 3 other players in a very similar scenario as Helldivers 2. Kill a bunch of stuff, complete some objectives, and survive. There's of course a lot of nuances in the margins of this, and the look and the feel and the tactile quality of the game, and some of the games like Vermintide and Left 4 Dead string along these missions in a broader narrative structure. But each have a varying success of making us care. And it's perhaps this reason as to why developers bother at all with a narrative or a story that has me curious. I bet the large reason is to create an emotional drive or attachment with the player beyond the emergent emotions or stakes of just playing the game. These silly cooperative shooters always have the proclivity towards the shenanigans of you and the boys getting up to no good, and they're often interlaced with serious moments of tension. When you have to carry the team, when you strategize for a difficult encounter that you keep losing to, the panic of jump scares, horrific boss encounters, and other surprises. These are actually a lot of the emotions and the memories of these games, not the cutscenes or the player quips or the quote-unquote story. But when designing a game, there's really a lot less certainty that you're going to actually be able to create those experiences for players. A lot of them are kind of based up to you and your friends. The hijinks of cooperative play is really player dependent. And so is that sort of experience going to be found across all players and all play experiences? Likely not. So what do? You slap some kind of story to it. You build up a world and lore and interesting but not really characters, and you try to create some sort of emotional readiness in your players. That, regardless of who you're playing with, you're going to get some sort of, this is why I care. But Helldivers 2 doesn't really do a lot of that, and I want to give you the reasons why that in rejecting some of these ideas, it actually sets it apart from many of its peers. The first idea is that Helldivers 2 doesn't treat you as a main character, doesn't treat you as even a named character, but rather an expendable soldier dedicated to a cause. This may not seem really significant at first, but you never have to worry about suspending your disbelief in some other games. None of you and the boys are main characters awkwardly sharing screen time. You don't even have to share your persona with other squads or mates off fighting in a different front. Through stripping you down into a nameless soldier, Helldivers 2 actually gives you a greater sense of individuality. And so by making you a soldier, Helldivers 2 is actually able to convey its narrative a lot better. That it's a game of war, and it makes you a part of the war. And who are the other soldiers fighting? Not NPCs, but other people. It makes you and the boys one small squad among thousands fighting for liberty. It makes you a part of a broader collective that is all pushing to achieve something beyond your individual party, even beyond your individual gameplay box. A lot of Helldivers 2's peers really struggle with this, and I think this is one of the major distinctions. You can have these games that are all played concurrently by hundreds of thousands of players, but nothing really links them all together. They're just isolated incidences. Helldivers 2 achieves this through its galactic front, through its war map, through going to different systems and completing missions on different systems, and seeing live where other people are playing and what missions they are doing and what fronts they seek to liberate. This gameplay is expressed through the achievement of fulfilling major orders, a weekly objective for everyone playing Helldivers 2. I'm unaware of other games of this style that set a global objective. And directing all of us to secure systems and repel attacks makes everyone, all tens of thousands of us, driven to play. You see all of these contextual pieces pop up across social media as new orders are fulfilled and as the galactic front shifts on Reddit or Twitter or on YouTube of people strategizing the sequence of battles that have to take place so that we can reach certain systems in time to liberate them. Like, this is awesome, and these sort of meta contextual pieces add a richness to the game that couldn't kind of really be designed for otherwise. It's to the players embracing the roleplay of, if you would, of this game. Fulfilling major orders alongside tens of thousands of other players also demonstrates this massive quality to Helldivers 2. I think some modern, massively multiplayer online role-playing games or MMORPGs forget that massive quality. Helldivers 2 doesn't let you interact with tens of thousands, but it contextualizes its narrative and supports having tens of thousands of players. This isn't about instant storyline content, but about creating a communal narrative together. Each individual squad can move the dial. That's how it connects us. By fulfilling your campaign and fighting towards a major order, you can move the dial a fraction of a percent. But isn't this just ironically the best expression of democracy? For elections can ride or die on a few percentage points. Quote unquote democracy being hilariously reflected in moving liberation meters by fractions is endlessly amusing and satisfying, but also it does mean that your victory counts for something beyond the success and fun of just you and the boys. So we've talked about how Helldivers 2 excels because it embraces the always online multiplayer and the massive quality to reinforce the narrative and emotional tether that we're all in a common cause, and we actually have a lot of individuality because of how we contribute to that, and we don't have named characters or elaborate sci-fi plots or whatever that we need to create an attachment. We just have you and your squad. But one thing that it also does, which is really interesting, is have a game master. The game devs say there is a developer within the studio who responds to the emergent gameplay of all Helldivers, that someone is back there responding to what is happening in the game. A planet too easy to take? It gets reinforced by automatons. Your mission timer suddenly cut in half? There are military reasons for that. Access to a stratagem halfway through a mission? Democracy provides. Whether this is actually AI or programmed or automated, or an actual dev, the hype around Game Master Joel creates a broader sense of community and reactivity to the game. It makes it all feel a lot more alive. And part of the reason Helldivers can do this is because it actually has a fairly contained and simple gameplay experience with a lot of variables. Those variables can constantly be tweaked and modified and adapted to create new, interesting scenarios. And the fact that it rejects some sort of cinematic or movie-like narrative with characters and plots and dialogue, etc., it can actually just really focus on this emerging galactic war. And so when learning about the Game Master, I couldn't help but think of Jonathan Blow's design commentary on his idea for an MMO. He wants to create a system that is inherently imbalanced and responsive. Take a listen.
It's going to be like the horoscope MMO or whatever, right? Where... Okay, so most games, and this goes back to the history of single-player games, right? Most games are statically balanced in that all the parameters have fixed values. Even if they're meta values, like, oh, you get more powerful as you have fewer hit points, right? That equation is still fixed. And so it's solvable. There is some solution to the optimum, right? And in multiplayer, in single player, it doesn't bother most of the players that much if one person finds the solution to the optimum, because it doesn't affect the other player's ability to play, except maybe that they're bummed that they don't get very close to the high score or whatever. But of course, in multiplayer, you just get owned by the guy who figured it out, right? So what I was thinking anyway that would be more interesting is just like, look, you know, you can draw a bunch of sine waves across like the astrological chart based on what stars are in the sky right now or whatever. And like, you know, like frost power is a little bit more powerful on Tuesday than Wednesday, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, the maximum is on Tuesday or something. And then, you know, lightning is better at other times. And it's based on environment. Like you also add a lot of variables like, hey, if the air is dry right now, lightning is better or something, right? And actually,
I feel like there was single player games that did this kind of thing, which was kind of not that interesting because you don't really want to have to play a single player game and think about if like the moon is a crescent moon right now.
Yes.
But it makes a ton of sense for these games that people play every day for hours a day, right?
Yes, I mean, multiplayer games, one of the biggest problems they have right now is they're trying to be like lifestyle games, right? Like, I'm trying to be a thing that people play several days a week for years. And how do I give them that much playtime? Like, how do I make myself interesting enough? And that's one way to do it, is having more and more nuance in the game. And I'm a little surprised. I haven't heard of any game doing that kind of thing, right?
And so what Arrowhead is doing, to me, has a lot of similarities to this. And I think this is deeply interesting, and not a lot of multiplayer games do this. The game master creates this level of modification, liveliness to it, that a lot of other PvE cooperative shooters are just sorely lacking. It keeps you coming back to fight the good fight. So while Helldivers 2 is a spoof on Starship Troopers, which itself is a satire on fascism and democracy, there's game design here in Helldivers that is actually deeply democratic, where many games want to make you an individualized and realized hero, engaged in some cinematic plotline. Helldivers makes you one soldier among tens of thousands, and its plotline emerges from your gameplay, your squad, and these loosely connected frameworks of major orders in an ever-changing galactic front that can be modified and tweaked seemingly by your enemies or game devs in response. You don't want to let your fellow soldiers down, whether they be fighting alongside you against the hordes of chainsaw-swinging automatons, or they're on a distant planet on the other side of galactic Earth, outnumbered and outflanked by towering Terminids. Helldivers 2 makes you a part of something where games always want to make you feel special, but in a way isolated and alone. When you fight for liberty, instead, you fight among thousands. Because just like every vote matters, so too does every Helldiver.